He shouldn't have said it out loud, but once the words left his mouth, there was no taking them back. If you want this marriage to stay real, then stop treating me like a charity case. The woman sitting across from me didn't react. Not immediately. Victoria Hale rarely reacted to anything. She just watched me with those dark, steady eyes that had terrified boardrooms full of billionaires for more than a decade. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "Careful, Ethan. You're the one who woke up married to me with $12 in your bank account." Silence stretched between us, heavy, sharp, dangerous. I looked down at the ring on my finger, the same ring I had been staring at all morning like it might disappear if I blinked hard enough. It hadn't, and neither had she. Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, the most powerful woman in the city and somehow my wife. The problem was I didn't remember marrying her, not even a little. The last clear memory I had was standing outside a corner liquor store with a cheap bottle of whiskey in my hand and the worst day of my life sitting on my shoulders like a truck. I had just been fired, not for stealing, not for messing up, for doing the right thing. My supervisor had been harassing a waitress who worked the night shift in the building cafe. When she tried to leave, he grabbed her arm. I stepped in. 2 minutes later, security escorted me out. That was the last job I had, and I needed that job more than oxygen, because my daughter Lily was 6 years old, and her heart was slowly failing. Medication alone cost more than my rent, the surgery she needed. It might as well have been $1 million. So yeah, I bought a bottle of whiskey. I told myself it was just one night to fall apart. Just one night before I figured out how to keep the world from collapsing on my little girl. But somewhere between that bottle and waking up in a penthouse suite that cost more than my entire yearly income. I apparently got married to a billionaire. I rubbed my temples. "Explain it again," I said slowly. Victoria leaned back in the chair like we were discussing quarterly earnings instead of the most insane thing that had ever happened to me. "We met in the hotel bar last night," she said calmly. "You were drinking. I was attending a corporate function upstairs." Her voice was smooth, controlled, almost emotionless. "You were upset about losing your job. You mentioned your daughter. We talked for nearly 2 hours." 2 hours? I couldn't remember 2 seconds. "And then," I asked. "And then," she continued, "I made you an offer." Of course she did. Everything about this woman screamed negotiation. "What kind of offer?" I asked. Victoria slid a document across the marble table toward me. A marriage certificate, my name, her name, county seal, official signatures, including mine. The room felt suddenly smaller. "You offered to marry me," I said slowly. "No," she corrected. "I offered you a deal." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was the only alternative to losing my mind. "A deal," I repeated. And drunk me thought marrying the most powerful woman in the city was a good idea. "You asked very intelligent questions actually," she said. "That somehow made it worse." "And this deal was what exactly?" I asked. Victoria folded her hands. "I need a husband." That sentence hung in the air like a dropped glass. "I'm sorry," I said. "You need what?" "A husband," she repeated, "temporarily." I stared at her. "Temporarily?" "Yes." "This is insane." "No," she said calmly, "it's practical." She stood and walked toward the window overlooking the city skyline. From up here the world looked small, controlled, predictable, probably how she liked it. "My board of directors is old-fashioned," she explained. "They believe leadership should look stable, married, settled." "And you married a drunk stranger to fix that problem." "I married someone outside my world." She turned and looked at me again. "Someone who wouldn't try to manipulate me." I almost laughed again. "Lady, I have $12. "Yes," she said, "exactly." Then she said something that froze the air in my lungs. "I also know your daughter's surgery costs $240,000. My heart stopped. "How do you know that?" "I investigate important decisions." "That's not investigation," I said quietly. "That's stalking." She didn't argue. You're 3 weeks behind on rent, she continued. Your daughter's medication runs out Friday. I clenched my jaw. You don't get to talk about my kid. Her voice softened just slightly. She deserves to live. That hit like a punch. And marrying you fixes that, I asked. Yes. How? Victoria returned to the table. Stay married to me for 1 year. 1 year. You attend public events, board meetings, charity functions. So I'm a prop. You're my husband. And in return, I pay for Lily's surgery, her treatment, her future care. My chest tightened. She said it so easily, like she was ordering coffee, but to me it sounded like oxygen after drowning. Still, something about this felt wrong, too easy, too clean. What's the catch? I asked. There is no catch. There's always a catch. Victoria studied me carefully. You're suspicious. I'm poor, I said. That's the same thing. For the first time. She smiled just a little. And it completely changed her face. You're also stubborn, she said. You haven't answered my question. The catch, she said quietly, is that my world is not kind to outsiders. You're bored. My enemies. Enemies? I asked. She nodded. They will try to destroy you to get to me. Great, perfect. Exactly what every single father wanted to hear. So let me summarize, I said. I marry a billionaire I barely know, move into a penthouse, pretend to be in love while corporate sharks try to tear me apart. Yes. And if I say no? Victoria didn't hesitate. Then I annul the marriage today. She slid the annulment papers toward me. And you walk away exactly where you were yesterday. Unemployed, broke, with a dying child. The silence in the room felt like gravity. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, a text from Mrs. Chen, our neighbor. Lily asked when you're coming home. She says her chest hurts again. My throat closed. I looked back at Victoria. You really would pay for everything? I asked quietly. Yes. No tricks. No tricks. I stared at the ring again. This time it felt heavier, like a decision. Finally, I looked back up at her. 1 year, I said. Victoria nodded. 1 year. Then she extended her hand. Welcome to the most complicated year of your life, Mr. Walker. I shook it, not knowing that the hardest part of this marriage wouldn't be pretending to love her. It would be the moment I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. But at that moment there was a much bigger problem. Because somewhere across the city, my daughter was struggling to breathe, and my brand new wife was the only person in the world who could save her. The question was, what would it cost me? I didn't remember the wedding, but I remembered fear, not the kind that hits you suddenly like a punch, the slow kind, the kind that lives in your chest every day when you're raising a sick child and pretending you're not terrified of losing her. And right now that fear was screaming, because my phone was still in my hand. Mrs. Chen's message sat on the screen. Lily says her chest hurts again. Victoria noticed the change in my face immediately. What happened? She asked. I didn't answer right away. My throat felt tight. My daughter, I finally said. She's having another episode. Victoria didn't hesitate. Where is she? At home with our neighbor. Then why are we still standing here? Before I could process what she meant, she was already grabbing her phone. Drive her downstairs. 5 minutes, she said into it. Then she turned to me. We're going. You don't have to. I know. That stopped me. She said it so simply, like helping was obvious, like Lily mattered, and that confused me more than anything else about this insane situation. The elevator ride down felt like forever. Victoria stood beside me, typing rapidly into her phone. What are you doing? I asked. Calling a doctor. We already have a doctor. Not the one Lily needs. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. A black car was waiting outside. Victoria slid into the back seat beside me and spoke to the driver. Riverside Apartments. Then she looked back at her phone. I'm arranging a pediatric cardiologist at Metropolitan Hospital, she said. My stomach dropped. That's the best hospital in the city. Yes. I can't afford that. You're married to me now, she said calmly. That's not how this works. It is today. I leaned back against the seat and stared out the window as the car pulled into traffic. This city had always felt too big for me, too expensive, too fast, but now it looked different because somewhere inside it, my daughter was struggling to breathe, and the woman sitting next to me might actually be able to save her. The thought terrified me, because nothing that powerful ever came without a price. The car stopped outside my apartment building 20 minutes later. Victoria stepped out and looked up at the cracked brick walls, the broken stairwell light, the rusted mailbox cluster. She didn't say anything, but I saw her take it in, every detail. "This is where you live," she said quietly. "Yeah." Then she followed me inside. The stairwell smelled like cheap paint and old carpet, 4 flights up. By the time we reached the door, my heart was pounding. I unlocked it and stepped inside. Lily. The curtain separating her corner of the apartment moved. Then her small voice came from behind it. "Daddy." Relief flooded me so hard my knees almost gave out. "I'm here, Ladybug." She stepped out slowly, her dark hair messy from sleep, her tiny hand pressed against her chest. And when she saw the woman behind me, her eyes widened. "Whoa." I blinked. "What?" Lily pointed. "Daddy, that lady looks like the magazine lady." Victoria crouched down to Lily's height. "You must be Lily." My daughter studied her carefully. Kids have this ability to read people. No filters, no politics, just instinct. "Are you my dad's boss?" Lily asked. Victoria glanced at me briefly. "Something like that." Lily nodded slowly. "Okay." Then she walked straight up to Victoria. "You're really pretty," she said. I covered my face. "Oh my God." But Victoria surprised me. She laughed, not the polite kind, a real laugh. "Thank you," she said. Then she looked at Lily carefully. "Does your chest hurt right now?" "A little," Lily admitted. Victoria's expression changed instantly. The calm CEO mask snapped back into place. She stood and looked at me. "We're leaving." "Hospital?" "Yes." Lily's eyes widened. "Am I in trouble?" "No," I said quickly. "Just getting you checked." Victoria gently lifted Lily into her arms. My daughter didn't even question it, just wrapped her arms around Victoria's neck. "Your hair smells nice," Lily told her. Victoria froze for half a second, then smiled softly. "Thank you." Watching them together felt strange, like 2 different worlds had collided, the billionaire CEO and my tiny, stubborn 6-year-old. The car ride to the hospital was quiet. Lily sat between us holding both our hands. Halfway there she looked up at Victoria. "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" I choked. Victoria didn't. "No." "Then what are you?" Victoria glanced at me, then back at Lily. "I'm your dad's wife." The words landed like thunder. Lily blinked. "You got married." "Apparently," I muttered. She considered this carefully, then shrugged. "Okay." That was it, kids. No drama, no panic, just acceptance. Victoria looked amused. "You're taking this surprisingly well." "My dad does weird things sometimes," Lily explained. I groaned. "Thanks." The hospital entrance came into view. Victoria's driver stopped right at the front. The moment we stepped out, things moved fast, too fast. 2 nurses were already waiting with a wheelchair. "How?" I started. Victoria spoke quietly. "I made a call." They took Lily inside immediately. Doctors, machines, questions. The room turned into organized chaos. But one thing became clear very quickly. Victoria hadn't exaggerated. Dr. Sarah Chen, top pediatric cardiologist in the country, she reviewed Lily's records with intense focus. After 10 minutes she looked up. "You're Ethan Walker." "Yes." She nodded. "And this is your wife." Victoria didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word sounded natural, like she had said it 1,000 times. Dr. Chen folded the chart. Your daughter's condition is serious, but the surgery she needs is absolutely possible. My heart slammed. How soon? If we stabilize her first, 6 to 8 weeks. 6 weeks. After years of being told it was impossible, I looked at Victoria. She didn't say anything, but her hand squeezed mine. Dr. Chen continued. There will be costs, of course. Victoria spoke before I could. Send everything to my office. Dr. Chen nodded like that made perfect sense. Because in Victoria's world. It did. An hour later, Lily was resting comfortably. The medication had eased the strain on her heart. She looked sleepy but happy. Daddy. Yeah, Ladybug. Did I scare you? A little. She smiled weakly. Sorry. Then she looked at Victoria. Are you really my stepmom now? Victoria hesitated, just for a second, then she took Lily's small hand. If that's okay with you. Lily grinned. Okay. Then she said something that froze both of us. You should stay. Victoria blinked. Stay. With us, Lily said sleepily, because Daddy gets lonely. I felt heat rush to my face. Lily. But Victoria was still staring at her. Your dad gets lonely. She asked quietly. Yeah, Lily murmured. He thinks I don't know, but I do. The room went very quiet, because kids always tell the truth, and in that moment I realized something terrifying. This arrangement, this fake marriage, this business deal, was about to become a lot more complicated, because Lily already believed we were a family, and Victoria was starting to look like she might believe it too. Lily fell asleep holding both our hands, mine on her left side, Victoria's on her right. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the monitor tracking Lily's heartbeat. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. Victoria was sitting in the chair beside the bed, still wearing that same sharp charcoal suit from the morning, except now it looked different. Less like armor, more like something she had forgotten to take off while being human. She was watching Lily, not like a CEO evaluating something, like someone protecting something. After a few minutes she whispered, "She trusts me." "Yeah," I said quietly, "that happens fast with kids." Victoria didn't look away from Lily. "That's what scares me." "Why?" She exhaled slowly. "Because I don't want to hurt her." That surprised me. "You won't." "You don't know that." I leaned back in my chair. "You've already done more for her in 6 hours than most people have done in 6 years. Victoria didn't respond, but her fingers tightened around Lily's hand. After a moment, she finally asked something she had been avoiding all day. "Ethan, why didn't you tell me how bad it was?" I looked at the floor. "Because I didn't know you." "You still don't." "Exactly." That made her quiet again. Then she said something unexpected. "I wasn't drunk last night." I looked up. "What?" "I was drinking," she said calmly, "but I wasn't drunk." My stomach dropped. "So you remember everything?" "Yes." "You remember marrying me?" "Yes." "You remember offering me the deal?" "Yes." I rubbed my face. "So you knew exactly what you were doing?" Victoria nodded once. "Yes." I laughed under my breath. "I married a billionaire who was completely sober." "You weren't unconscious," she said. "You were emotional." "That's a nice way of saying drunk." "You were honest." That made me pause. Victoria finally looked at me. "You talked about Lily for almost an hour." Something twisted in my chest. "What did I say?" "You said she was the bravest person you've ever met." I swallowed. "You said every decision you make starts with one question." "What question?" She repeated my own words back to me. "Will this help Lily live longer?" Hearing that out loud hurt, because it was true. Every choice, every job, every dollar, every sleepless night, all of it came down to that one thing. Victoria studied me carefully. You also said something else. What? You said if someone ever gave you the chance to save her, you'd give up anything. I looked back at Lily sleeping between us. Yeah, I said quietly, I would. Victoria didn't speak for a while. Then she said the thing that changed the air in the room. Ethan, if you want out of this marriage, I'll still pay for the surgery. I blinked. What? I mean it, she said. No contract, no arrangement, no expectations. That doesn't make sense. It does to me. Why? Victoria hesitated. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out something small. She set it on the hospital table, a tiny wooden rabbit, old, worn, one ear chipped. I stared at it, my brain struggling to connect something. You recognize it? She asked softly. No. She nodded slowly. I didn't think you would. Then she said something that made my skin go cold. You gave this to me 20 years ago. My head snapped up. What? In the slums behind the old cannery. A distant memory flickered somewhere in my head. Not clear, just shapes. Rain, a girl crying. You were 12, she continued quietly. Some older boys had cornered me. My chest tightened. You stepped in. And you got beaten pretty badly. I stared at her, trying to see the scared kid she was describing inside the composed billionaire sitting next to me. After they left, she said softly, you sat with me until I stopped crying. The hospital room felt very still. You gave me this rabbit. She pushed it toward me. You said it used to belong to your mom, but I looked like I needed it more. My throat felt tight. I don't remember that. I know, she said gently. You got meningitis a few months later. It caused memory damage. Something about that sounded familiar. Doctors, hospitals, a blank space in my childhood. You looked for me, I asked, for years. Why? Victoria gave a small, sad smile. Because you were the first person who ever protected me without asking for anything. My chest felt heavy. So you married me because of a wooden rabbit. No, she said. I married you because fate dropped you into the same bar 20 years later. I didn't know what to say to that, because suddenly this arrangement didn't feel random anymore. Victoria leaned back in her chair. I was going to help you anyway, she admitted, but you agreed to the marriage first. I shook my head slowly. This is insane. Yes. You tracked me down after 20 years. I found you 2 years ago. That stunned me. You knew about me before last night. Yes. Why didn't you contact me? Victoria glanced at Lily. I didn't want to interfere with your life. That's exactly what you did. A small smile tugged at her lips. True. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Lily stirred slightly in her sleep, her fingers tightening around ours. Victoria looked down at her, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. She deserves more than survival. She deserves a life. I nodded, yeah. Victoria looked back at me. And if that means I lose the company or the board or everything else? Her voice didn't shake, so be it. You'd throw away your empire. For her. She shook her head, for you. That hit harder than anything else she had said. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a business deal anymore. Before I could respond, the hospital door opened. Dr. Chen stepped inside. She's stable, the doctor said, but this episode confirms something. My stomach dropped. What? Dr. Chen looked directly at me. We need to move the surgery up. How soon? She didn't hesitate. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 14 days. That was all the time between my daughter and a life-saving operation. Victoria squeezed my hand. We'll be ready. Dr. Chen nodded. I'll start preparations. Then she left. The door closed behind her, and the reality settled over the room. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until everything changed. I looked at Victoria. Still want to be married? She met my eyes without hesitation. Yes. even knowing this gets harder from here. Her answer came immediately, especially because of that. For the first time since this nightmare started. I believed her, but we had no idea the real fight was about to begin, because somewhere across the city, Victoria's biggest enemy had just learned about our marriage, and she was already preparing to destroy it. Margaret Chen didn't knock, she never did. The hospital door opened quietly, but the tension she brought with her filled the entire room. Victoria stiffened beside me. "You move fast," Victoria said coldly. Margaret stepped inside like she owned the place. Tall, calm, expensive. The kind of woman who looked like she had never lost a negotiation in her life. Until now. "I heard congratulations were in order," Margaret said, glancing at Lily asleep in the bed. Then her eyes moved to me. "So this is the husband." I stood slowly, something like that. Margaret smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You know, Ethan, your background investigation was fascinating." Victoria's voice dropped several degrees. "You had no right." "Oh, I had every right," Margaret replied. "You married the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company." She turned to me. "Warehouse supervisor, recently fired, bank account balance $12. Her smile widened, quite the fairy tale. I clenched my jaw. Victoria stepped forward. "You're not here to insult my husband." "Oh, but I am," Margaret said calmly. "Because tomorrow morning, the board is voting on whether this marriage disqualifies you as CEO." The room went silent. Victoria didn't react outwardly, but I felt the tension in her body. Margaret continued. "You married a desperate man while he was drunk. That's manipulation. That's coercion. That's grounds for removal." Victoria's voice cut through the air. "Get out." Margaret laughed softly. "You think this is about pride, Victoria? It's about stability. The board believes you staged this marriage to create the image of a family." She looked at Lily again. "A very convenient sick child." "That was it." I stepped forward. "Say that again." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You heard me. My daughter isn't your talking point." "And yet," she said smoothly, "she's the entire reason you married Victoria." She wasn't wrong, and that made it worse. Victoria grabbed my arm gently. "Ethan." But I wasn't backing down. "You want the truth," I said. Margaret tilted her head. "Please." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I married her for my daughter." Her smile widened. Finally some honesty. "But that's not why I stayed." Margaret's expression faltered slightly. I gestured toward the hospital bed. "I stayed because she showed up. She sat in that chair for 4 days while my kid was struggling to breathe. She called doctors I could never afford. She held my hand when I thought Lily was dying." Margaret's smile faded. I looked her dead in the eye. "So if you think this marriage is fake." My voice hardened. "You do know Victoria Hale at all?" The room went quiet again. Margaret studied me, then Victoria, then Lily, for the first time. She looked uncertain. Finally she sighed. "Well, this just became inconvenient." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Margaret straightened her jacket. "It means the board meeting tomorrow will be interesting." Then she turned and walked toward the door. But before leaving she said something unexpected. "Take care of the girl." And she was gone. The door closed. The tension in the room collapsed like a building finally giving up. Victoria looked at me. "That was reckless." "Was it wrong?" She didn't answer, because we both knew it was. 2 weeks later. The surgery lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. Every minute felt like a year. Victoria and I sat in the hospital waiting room holding hands like drowning people, neither of us speaking, neither of us breathing properly, until Dr. Chen walked through the door. She made it. 3 words, that was all it took. Victoria broke first. A sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob escaped her. I didn't even realize I was crying until she pulled me into a hug. "She's okay," I kept repeating. "She's okay." 30 minutes later, we saw Lily, small, tired but smiling. "Hi," she whispered. Victoria kissed her forehead. "You were incredible." Lily blinked sleepily. "Did I miss anything?" I laughed through tears. "Just the rest of your life starting." Recovery wasn't easy, but Lily got stronger every day. 3 months later, Dr. Chen cleared her for normal activity. The first thing Lily wanted to do was run, so we took her to the park. She stood on the grass for a moment, looking nervous. Then she ran, not fast, not graceful, but running, laughing, alive. Victoria grabbed my hand. "She's really okay." "Yeah, she's really going to have a life." I squeezed her hand. "Yeah." That evening we adopted a golden retriever named Max, because Lily insisted every real family needed a dog. 6 months later, Victoria legally adopted Lily, the day the paperwork came through. Lily looked at her and asked quietly, "Can I call you Mom now?" Victoria cried harder than anyone in the room. "Yes." And just like that, we became a real family. 1 year later, we held a second wedding, not because the first wasn't legal, but because this time we meant every word. When it was time for vows, Victoria looked at me and said something I will never forget. "Some people marry for love. Some marry for survival." Then she smiled at Lily standing beside us. "Sometimes you're lucky enough to get both." And that was the moment I realized something. The night I got drunk and married a billionaire. I thought my life had been destroyed, but it hadn't. It had just begun, because love doesn't always arrive the way you expect. Sometimes it shows up disguised as a deal. Sometimes it begins with desperation. Sometimes it looks like the worst mistake of your life. But if you're lucky, it becomes the best decision you ever make. I started that night with $12 in my bank account, a dying daughter, and nothing left to lose. 1 year later, I had a wife who would burn the world down for our family, a daughter who could run across a soccer field without losing her breath, and a life I never believed I deserved. Some promises don't start with romance. Some start with survival, but the ones that last are the ones you choose to keep every single day.